everybody, welcome back to another reading update. I'm thrilled to be talking about all of these different books today, so we're just gonna dive right in. Starting with what I finished, the first thing I finished was Blessed Monsters by Emily A. Duncan. I have to be honest, I'm feeling a little empty. Not because the book was bad, but because I just cannot believe that this series is over. Like, I have been following the Something Dark and Holy trilogy since it came out, I think in 2019, maybe even 2018. I don't remember. It's been forever. And I have loved every single one of these books. It is by far one of my favorite YA fantasy series. I love dark fantasy, specifically fantasy around blood magic. And this one, I mean, that's all that it is. It's all about blood magic. And I just absolutely adore all of the characters. So I knew going into Blessed Monsters that I was probably going to have a little bit of a book hangover after I finish it, and I'm definitely feeling it today. Overall, I really loved the book. There were a few things that kind of bothered me. There were a lot of point of views in this novel. Throughout the series, we've kind of followed three main point of views of the three main characters. But in this novel, we also got point of views for all of these different secondary characters, which meant that there was a lot of jumping around, which is sometimes hard to follow, specifically in the more action and plot-based parts of the novel. That was a little bit of a struggle for me, and maybe for other readers as well. The other thing is that I didn't feel completely satisfied by how the whole conflict wrapped up. It was a little rushed, in my opinion. I wish that we would have gotten a little bit more around the central climax and action. That being said, the rest of the novel just felt kind of like a big family reunion, specifically the second half, because throughout this trilogy, the main characters have been together and apart and together and apart, and this was really everybody coming together and defeating this conflict as a family, which I really loved. And I did feel really warm and wonderful inside seeing them all together, even though there were some dark moments and obviously a lot of conflict and action. So overall, I'm giving that 4 out of 5 stars. And I will also want to give a big shout out to Wednesday Books for sending me an early release copy. It was my most anticipated book of 2021. And though I'm still feeling a little empty inside, and I'll probably reread the series here soon, I am just thrilled with how Duncan chose to wrap up this series. I really do think it was a wonderful end to a fantastic fantasy series. So once again, that is Blessed Monsters by Emily A. Duncan. Okay, next one I actually finished last night. It was the pick for my friend book club. It is Black Book by Mateo Askaripour. I loved this book. I finished it. It took me a little bit to get started, but once I got about 100 pages in, I couldn't put it down. I stayed up till 1 a.m. reading it and then finished it the next day. It is powerful. It's a satirical criticism of diversity in the workplace, particularly in the tech startup sphere. And being somebody who's worked for both startups and also works in tech, even though everything was kind of heightened, there were still a lot of things that had me oh, I've seen that happen, or that's completely how this environment goes, and it just wasn't surprising. So that was really interesting for me to be reading this from that perspective, specifically the perspective of a white woman in tech, because this book is all about the lack of racial diversity in those spaces. Lots of trigger warnings for racism, but this book is wild. It is so action-packed. The plot moves so quickly, and so it's really easy to get through. But all I can say is wow. I absolutely love this. If anybody who has a book club, this would be a great book club pick. If you haven't already read it, we ended up talking for over an hour because everybody came into the discussion a different feeling about the book. And so we kind of talked through all of that together, and it was a great discussion. So 5 out of 5 stars for me. It's just smart and funny, but also powerful and full of morally ambiguous characters that are doing good things, but are they doing them for the right reasons kind of questions. absolutely 100% recommend. That is Black Book by Mateo Askaripour. All right, next one I'm going to talk about that I finished is Ladies of the Secret Circus by Constance. I was thrilled to get an advanced release copy from Orbit Books. This was one of my most anticipated 2021 releases. I read Water for Elephants at a very young, impressionable age of like probably 13. And ever since then, I've been completely obsessed with books about circuses. I don't know why, but I just have been. So when I saw that this was about a circus, but not only about a circus, but about a demonic circus set in 1920s Paris, I was like, I have to have this. So as soon as I got it and out of the mail, I started it and I read it within a couple days. I will say this one did fall a little flat for me. I didn't love it quite as much as I was hoping. The atmosphere of the circus is incredible. I just want to, like, I say I want to live in that world, but I don't really want to live in that world because it's a circus in hell. But just, oh gosh, it was so lush and vivid. And I loved the sections that were written in journal entries from a performer in the circus. Those were by far my favorite parts of the novel. I also really enjoyed the different demon characters. They were all so witty and I loved the banter. But the main character kind of annoyed me just because she couldn't suspend belief at all when it came to magic, even though she herself is magic. But anytime she would encounter any sort of like magical being or magical power or something, she would just act so surprised, and it just really bothered me. And I also had some problems with the pacing a little bit. The end was really, really rushed and kind of hard to piece together. And I wish we would have spent more time on that and less time kind of in the beginning exposition. So all in all, it was probably a 3.5 star read for me, but still recommend it, especially if you're like me and love books about circuses. So once again, that is Ladies of the Secret Circus by Constance. Now on to what I'm reading. So you guys actually kind of caught me in the middle of my list. And like I said, I finished Black Book on Sunday, and I haven't 100% decided or picked up another physical book. I am reading our Dandy Roll Book Club April pick, which I can't announce quite yet. That will be announced on Saturday. I'm really enjoying it, but it's still a secret, so I'm not going to talk about it today. But we'll be talking about it in probably my next video. So the only thing that I'm really reading right now is a digital release copy of Gold Diggers by Sanjena Sathian. I'm really enjoying it. Similarly to Black Book, it took me a little bit to get into, but once I was like 100 pages in, I read for like 3 hours straight last night. I absolutely can't put it down. It is part coming of age story, part magical realism about a young boy named Neil, who is the son of Indian immigrants, and it takes place in two key moments of his life. The first part of the book is when he is a junior and senior in high school, and he's trying to kind of live up to his family and his community's expectations and figure out what he wants to do while not really having a ton of clear ambitions for his life. And then the second half of the novel takes place when Neil is finishing up his dissertation in grad school. And so the overall plot centers around Neil and his friend Anita. So they are neighbors, and Neil discovers that Anita's mother is creating this alchemist potion using gold that she and Anita have stolen from all of these different Indian members of the community. Specifically young students who are, showing some form of success. And they steal gold and they boil it down into this lemonade potion, and then Anita drinks it so that she can take a little bit of their ambition to help her achieve her goals. Neil discovers this and kind of joins them making this potion. And so they're drinking this potion, they're seeing a lot of success, they're winning competitions, they're doing well in school, and then something happens, which I'm not going to spoil for you all, that causes them to split apart and really changes Neil's life in a very detrimental way. So when the novel picks back up 10 years later, Neil has not spoken to Anita since this event, and he is still really struggling with the repercussions of it. but Anita contacts him out of the blue one day. And so then once again, these two kind of resume their old ways. It's a really expansive story. I will say I am struggling a little bit with the length of the chapters. There are very long chapters, which is something that I don't really do well with, but I think it's being heightened by the fact that I'm reading it digitally, which I'm also not really a huge digital reader. So I think that's why it kind of took me a while to get into, is because I couldn't find a clear stopping point. So it was just kind of exhausting in the beginning reading. But now that I have gotten a cadence and I'm connected to the characters, I'm 100% in. And the cover is amazing, so I will definitely be purchasing a copy for myself when it comes out in April. So once again, that is Gold Diggers by Sanjena Sathian. Okay, on to what I bought. The first thing is a book that I have been dying to get my hands on for a while. It is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I have seen this book all over Bookstagram, and I have been dying to read it. It is a book in translation that takes place in a cafe in Tokyo where you get the ability to travel back in time. But the kind of catch is that you have to travel in time, complete your business, and be back before your coffee gets cold. I am thrilled to be reading this. Once again, it's magical realism, which is one of my favorite genres, and I just love this concept. And I think I also was a little biased by the cover because the cover is amazing. I've been waiting to get a copy, and I went to my local independent bookstore and they had a copy on the shelf, and so I immediately bought it, and I'm just so thrilled. This is probably one that I'll start in the next 2 weeks because it's really high on my TBR. I don't know much about the specifics of the plot, but obviously as I start reading it, I will let you guys know my thoughts. So once again, that is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. All right, last book I want to talk about today. I want to give a thank you to Grand Central Publishing for sending me a copy of What's Mine and Yours by Naima coaster, along with a tote bag of this gorgeous book cover. Once again, this was another one of my 2021 anticipated releases, so I was thrilled when I opened a package and saw this inside. So What's Mine and Yours centers around a small town in North Carolina as they work to integrate their school systems. So students from the primarily Black side of town are now attending a primarily white school. So this sets off a bunch of racial tensions between the community, but specifically this book centers around two mothers and their children. So G and Noelle are two students at the school. G is one of the new Black students, and Noelle, who is actually half Latina, but her white mother really just refuses to recognize that part of her. These two students enter the school play together, and when their paths kind of collide, it just sets off a chain of events that will follow them all the way through adulthood. Since I have not started this, I don't fully know much about the plot beyond what I've heard from other bloggers and what's in the publisher's description, but I will say I have heard that there are pretty strong trigger warnings with this one, so if you're interested in picking it up, please do check those before you do. I'm really excited to dive into this story, and we'll hopefully be starting it here pretty soon. But thanks again to Grand Central Publishing for sending me a copy of What's Mine and Yours by Naima coaster. That's everything for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment and let me know what you're reading, what you just finished, what you bought. And of course, in the meantime, follow me on Instagram at NotSoWellRead, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye, everyone.